You're not the first person that I've heard the discussion about. I talked her down. Description.
Yeah.
It was like less than $20.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like Matt Westlake at
We're going to
get hookers. What the hell, dude?
Yeah.
The funniest part of that is Amy going, "What?" What?
All right, we are live.
Think.
Okay.
Johnny 5.
All right, who's bringing us in?
Brandon.
Okay.
Okay.
Say when.
When?
Whenever you want. 3, 2, 4.
Zach, are you recording?
8.
Okay.
All right, welcome back from the break. Hopefully, I think by the time we have this episode, the music that you heard on the break is going to be from my good friend Brent's band out of Columbia, Missouri, The Many Colored Death. Hopefully.
Sure.
We're working on putting them. Yeah, he's working on getting the tracks to me. I don't know if we will have them by the time we mix this down.
Probably.
Does he play music in the closet too?
Oh God,
man.
I'm sorry.
Yes, he plays music in the closet.
I'm beating a dead horse.
Everything I do and everybody I know does everything in the closet.
I'm sorry, dude. I couldn't resist him.
I don't know why. I don't know why you couldn't resist. It seems like it'd be very easy to resist to me.
It's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe once you kill the horse,
Do you
it's
not
just fun
keep
to keep
anything?
just beating the hell out of it.
Stubby's closets are completely
Flog
empty
it.
because he's too afraid of anybody saying, "You went in the closet."
No.
So he's like, "Man, I wish we could use those little tiny rooms that are in those other rooms."
he's so good for stuff.
But I'm just worried about what people are going to say.
Whatever. Dude.
Wow.
Anyway.
All right. So the last thing we want to get back to as far as speeding up your brew day, the last thing we hadn't covered was chilling. Chilling,
End of the
especially.
process.
Just chill.
Yeah, end of the
Yeah,
process.
just chill. I chill most of my brew day. Mm-hmm. But no,
In your sweatpants.
It depended on in my sweatpants. Absolutely, that's in my own
Stand up, you
house.
speed up your brew
Commando.
day.
So in some parts of the country, that's never a problem, But down here,
Wearing sweatpants?
yes, wearing sweatpants. I think it's mandatory in some parts of the country. I won't. Like Oklahoma, I think if you're going to go to Walmart in Oklahoma, you're required to wear sweatpants.
Oh man,
West
we got a lot of
Virginia, too.
customers in Oklahoma. Not anymore.
And they've all been to Walmart, and they all know what I'm talking about. You know that People of Walmart website? That's all one Walmart in Oklahoma.
Oh my.
No, I
goodness.
love Oklahoma, but trust me, go to a Walmart in Oklahoma. You'll know what I'm talking about.
But not Arkansas.
I haven't gone to a Walmart in Arkansas.
You frequent them in Oklahoma?
I do, actually, yeah. I spend more time in Oklahoma. So. Anyway, we were talking about chilling. We were trying to talk about chilling. So basically, you need to take it into the closet to chill. That's the only place that you're going to be able to do it right or quickly is in the closet.
Just let it die, man. Just let it die.
Oh, I should let
Just the guy that egged it on.
So, no, really, in some parts of the country, it's not a problem because you've always got at least cool water to work with when you're chilling. And in other parts of the
nice.
country, like where we are, in the summer, I've got 85, 90
92
degree water
degree
coming out
water.
of, yeah. So chilling can be an issue. So there's a few different ways you can do it. This can be a really time-consuming part of your brew day.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think if you're using an immersion chiller and your water's 90 degrees, it's just going to take forever. So if that's the case, I think using a pre-chiller is one of the best things that you can do to speed that up. And basically,
Right.
you're going to use an immersion chiller in line between your hose and your actual immersion chiller, and you're just going to put it in a bucket of icy water and cool off your hose water before it gets to your actual chiller.
Sure as hell hope you don't get shrinkage.
Oh, there'll be significant shrinkage, I
but
think.
you got to remember you need to use your groundwater first.
So
Or you'll use
so
a
cold-
lot of that ice.
Right. Yeah, you want to knock it down. That's a very good point, Mikey. You want to knock it down to, I don't know, 120.
As low as you can get it.
Yeah.
Even at 90 degrees, you should be able to get down to 120 range pretty fast.
Yeah.
So you're saying
And
that
stir it.
cold water makes your hose shrink.
Stubby, get out.
Hey, Zach, can you turn off microphone number 1?
Is it number 1? I don't know. Check the 5 labels. And see.
I'll number 1. Because I'm number 1.
Number 1. I'm number 2. That means I'm.
Who does number 2 work
The
for?
shit.
You're the shit.
Yeah. No, but you're right, Mike, because you will go through quite a bit of ice. It'll melt it pretty quickly, so you don't want to waste that on the first 80 or 90 degrees that you're chilling. You want to knock it down and then start using your pre-chiller. The other thing, too, that you have to remember about using a pre-chiller is that it's the opposite of an immersion chiller. With an immersion chiller, you want the water flowing through it as fast as possible because you want it to carry away as much heat as you possibly can. Once you use a pre-chiller, that water has to spend a little bit of time inside the pre-chiller to actually chill, to make it get cold. So you don't want to use it at full blast. And the way I've done this in the past is set up your pre-chiller, set up your immersion chiller, turn on your water, and grab the end of the hose and just feel the water that's coming out and adjust your water flow until it gets as cold as possible. And that's where you want to leave it.
Right.
I swear, can I say anything at all? I mean, is it possible?
I feel like Beavis tonight.
Yeah, that's about right.
He said hose.
Nailed it.
Grab his hose.
Grabbing hoses.
Yeah. I just all of a sudden you kept talking about ice, and I kept having these envisions of
Ice?
vanilla
Really?
ice.
Can't even say ice?
Vanilla ice. You know, don't.
He's on another plane.
Just-
I think you
Just
need
Just
to
stop, collaborate. and
make
listen.
sure that you drink more beer during the week. You need to get acclimated.
Yeah.
No more blood tests for you.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, when is this? Can we get it over with? Like,
So then the other thing, and Greg and I were talking about this a little bit at the break, and something that I do too, is sometimes I just don't even try to get it too cool
Right.
at all. You know, I just give up.
Well, you get it down underneath. Get it down to 90.
Yeah,
I mean,
90.
at least, you
Yeah.
know, because I know that
Which is
he
not hard to
practices
do.
that too. He'll every time he puts it as an overnight because he wants to clarify the beer before, and he'll transfer it the next day.
Yeah.
But even if you don't do that, overnight in a controlled fermentation space will drop that beer to the correct temperature
Yeah.
for pitching. You know?
The reality is for me, you know, I'm generally fermenting real low, 63, 64 degrees. I'm not going to get it that low or at least I'm not going to hit that target exactly with my chilling no matter how cold my water is. I'm going to have to put it in my fermentation chamber and cool it down anyway. And a lot of times, you know, it's not going to be that night. It might happen in the middle of the night that it gets down that temperature, so I'm
Right.
pitching in the morning anyway.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about a 5-degree drop to 5 to 10, you could possibly do that within a few hours.
Right.
But otherwise, it's going to
We've-
take all night. you
we've
know?
got a customer that comes in the shop, and he's bought a grandfather. He's bought quite a bit of stuff, and he bought himself, I believe, a 5 or 7 cubic foot chest freezer and a small pump, and he fills the entire chest freezer with water and puts it at about 36 degrees, and he knocks out in about 20 minutes.
There you go.
Wow,
Damn.
that would worry me. I don't think those are meant to hold water.
No,
like
not
that.
really.
I think it would leak at some point.
They
and ruin
occasionally
them.
hold beer up to
They
a high
definitely
degree,
hold
but,
beer.
you know, not even meant
Yeah,
to do
but that's
that.
like 3 or 4 inches, and usually not for very long.
Brandon knows about 3 or 4
Yes,
inches.
You can just put you a tarp in there like a redneck hot tub.
Yeah.
That's actually not a
But
bad
he-
idea.
It's a brilliant idea. You know, it's basically a
He must
homemade
have a lot of
glycol.
extra space and a lot of extra. Yeah, it'd be like a glycol system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like a cold water tank on a.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you could
Glycol
you
chiller.
could pump out with a pond pump and right back into the top, and you're not gonna.
It's so much
There's
water.
so much
You're not
water.
gonna,
You're not
yeah,
gonna change
yeah.
the temp. Yeah.
One of the ways that we say, it's funny because I have a Blickman Therminator and I used it for years and I would cuss it nonstop because it worked. It's an absolutely fantastic piece of equipment. Don't get me wrong. But the biggest problem with it is the way it works is it really directs all the water and really thin, you know, sheets versus on the other side it has the wart and real thin areas. But the problem is that it plugs up with hops.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
unless you have some sort of really fine mechanism to really strain out the hops, this thing plugs up like a bitch. So the problem I always had with it, I was trying to whirlpool and chill
Yeah,
at the
you
same
can't do
time,
that,
and you
no.
can't because by the time you get the whirlpool going, well, the Terminator's already plugged up. So I said
That's
well,
why I went to the counterflow that I got
yeah,
from you.
exactly.
And it
So
works much better for that.
and that's what I use for chilling now. But what we started doing is when we were brewing here in the Greyfather, I had this thing just laying around. So I went and bought a pond pump, and I use that Blickman Therminator for a pre-chiller. So I'm actually recirculating ice water through the Therminator, and man, we were knocking out stuff at 55, 60 degrees.
Yeah, I can see that.
Pass, man.
Yeah,
because it's really efficient and it works fantastic. It just doesn't work well, I don't think, for brewing the wort.
We plugged up Doug Zent's one time years ago. I mean, we did an IPA and just tried to run it through there.
Trickle water.
Immediately plugged it up. Yeah,
Right.
The problem with that too on those plate chillers is that you have to make sure you clean them out really, really well, because if you do plug it up like that and you don't get everything out, it's ruined.
you have to. Well, you really have to bake it.
Yeah.
Even then,
and then
I had a friend who ruined one like that.
Really?
He baked it. He hooked that thing up and let it recirculate PBW for like 12 hours, and still every time he used it, little pieces of crap would come out of it.
Yeah, if you decide you want to get one of them, and that's not just Blickman, any kind of plate chiller.
Any kind of plate chiller, yeah.
That you can't take apart and clean. I mean, like commercial ones, they use the same thing, but the way that they're built, you can take them apart and clean them if they get plugged up or whatnot. But if you decide you want to get one of those, or you're thinking about getting one, just go online and read the reviews. I mean, and read about people's problems with trying to clean them out
and once I knew not to do that, I had great success with one for a long time. The only reason I got away from the plate chiller is because I wanted to be able to recirculate through it and whirlpool,
right? And
I needed that flow rate. But other than that, you just use a hop spider or hop socks or whatever. You just keep your hops out of your beer. The same thing you have to do with a grain father. It's the same thing.
Which is something else to think about as far as if you want to speed up your chilling, then you want to keep the hops out of that because it's going to make a faster process.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and that's something too, though. If you're going to decide you want to get one of those things and you want to use it, I would highly recommend. You got to look at it. That's not going to speed up your brew day in a way, because you're going to have to sit there and back flush that damn thing at the end of the brew day. And you've got to, because if you, like you said, Brandon, if you don't clean it out well, it's not gonna. You're gonna have a nightmare ahead of you.
Yeah, you do have to back flush them pretty good. So,
and that's and also with the equipment side of this about what we're talking about with chilling. If you do happen to have a Herms system, you can always fill up the Herms kettle with ice water and recirculate through that as you're also doing any other method of chilling that you happen to be doing, or use that as your main
as a cold
method.
liquor tank.
Yeah, a cold liquor tank. So it's like, and that really works well for some people. I've seen the same thing where they get lager temperatures really quickly. So think about that as well.
I think Jimmy does that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So, but it's all of those different things as far as shortening the time. If you can't get it down to temp, but it's within your budget to have a controlled fermentation space, think about it. Go ahead and get that space, put that beer in there overnight, pitch the next day, oxygenate the next day, and that saves a lot of time in your day. So,
that's the other thing too. You mentioned oxygenation and all that. Sometimes just letting it sit overnight to chill and get down to temperature, then you can do all your oxygenation and all that stuff the next day. And that cuts some time off of one day and adds it to the next. For me, before I leave for work, go out there and take 10, 15 minutes or whatever and do what I need to do as far as the oxygen and the yeast.
And include that in your scheduling. Just know that it's included in your schedule. That's the thing. I think a lot of people come up with ideas at the last minute. It sounds great, and then it doesn't work for them because it wasn't included in their scheduling. And that's, brewing process in general is try to think it all out in advance before you've had any beers. The beers are where everything goes wrong most of the time. Lalonde always says, don't have a beer until you're well into your boil and things like that. And that's pretty much the truth if you don't want to make any mistakes.
So you mean drinking beer actually impairs your judgment?
Possibly.
Really? You think?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
happen.
you're crystal clear evidence of that tonight.
Closet judgments.
Never. Yeah, don't judge me.
But overall, I think if you apply a bunch of different methods during your brew day, that you can just think about it. What can you cut out here? What can you cut out there? You can take something that for a lot of people takes at least 6 hours. You can cut that down to 4, possibly even 3, depending on what you're really talking about.
Yeah. So there's lots of studies out there, Greg, that people are talking about, shortening your brew day, and a lot of people are actually saying, "Hey, you only need to mash for 30 minutes now."
Right.
You might have if you're getting 70% or 75% efficiency and you're cutting 30 minutes out of your brew day, You might have a little better efficiency if you go longer, but the malts today are so well modified that you may not have to really mash. I see people occasionally say, "Oh, I'll mash for an hour and a half," and I'm like, "Good Lord, you must be glutton for punishment," because most of these malts are so highly modified now. You don't have to mash that long. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of the times, I think I've talked about this on a previous episode. Is a lot of times, I've got in there and I started doing a step mash, and I'm like, man, the beer turned out like crap. I'm doing a German Pilsner, and I did three different steps, in a mash schedule, and lo and behold, it's really thin, and I'm like, what the hell? What's going on here? Well, I think the problem is that grain is converting in the first 30 minutes. So hell, I don't even have time to get to the next mash schedule. So most of the conversion's already done by the time I get to the next step mash. So I think you got to be really careful as to what you're thinking about, because I recently talked to some of these guys, and like one of the guys that's running a mash squeezer, or a mash filter, or some people are calling them. And these guys are milling this stuff to absolute, they're only boiling for 30 minutes and they're only mashing for like 30 minutes. So there may be something there to think about, and maybe even, it depends on how you are, how much you value your time.
Yeah, how pressed are you for time?
And so...
if you want to take 12 hours at a brew,
you can do it. Yeah.
No, I do about 6. 6 to 8.
I've seen you take a long time, where you started way before me and you finished way after me at Martin House, and you're like, what hurry am I in? And I'm like, man, that must be nice. That's being single and no kids.
Yeah.
All I ever think about is this cleaning time afterwards. It's like, I want my stuff packed up and ready to go. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when you get it done, you want it to I want to be done so I can go ahead and enjoy the rest of whatever I'm doing with people that are here.
That's what I did this last year.
The thing, too, to think about with that is that at the end of the day, an extra 10 or 12 minutes of cleaning is worth an hour of cleaning at the beginning of your next brew day. Oh, yeah, big time. It takes so much less time to clean at the end of a brew day than it does if you let it sit and try and do it before the next brew day. So that actually does save you time to take a little bit of extra time and get that cleaning done right. I know that from experience because I'm a procrastinator and I'm lazy.
Everybody's had that, and we talked about JB earlier, and he's one person that I always heard was make sure you do your cleaning after your brew, and you will save yourself so much misery that it's always worth doing. Unless you just have an emergency situation, you got to get the hell out. It's like, I got to go,
I think part of the problem, too, is it depends. At Iron Mash, and there's no hotel by. You don't have a hotel room nearby. No, anyway.
Okay, so let's move on to this beer tasting we were talking about doing.
Okay, cool. I think this is a really cool experiment, or just evaluation. But
this is.
I want to give mad props to these guys. I'd never had their beers before until I got out to the East Texas. But it's a little brewery out of Shreveport. Called Great Raft, and I had a couple of their beers this weekend, and I brought back their Schwartz beer or their black lager, and it's really tasty. Also, I had their pale ale. It was really fantastic too. I can't remember what it was called. It had something to do with corruption, like this one too. So
I'm also enjoying this True Vine Rose City Pale Ale too.
Yeah, they're out of Tyler.
Yeah. I know you think it's kind of bitter. I didn't expect to like it because I'm not a big fan of rose hips, but I think it's really nicely done.
I think if you're in Tyler, you have to brew a beer with roses. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds about.
That's a thing.
Yeah. Well, they're like the rose capital of the world.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Like they grow so many roses there. Yeah, that's like that's their industry there.
Oh, so that must be what Rose City means?
Yeah. I would assume so.
It's like a code. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of
that part very often.
We've got 2 beers here that Greg and I brewed. It's the same beer, same kit. It's our local brewery, Rabbit Hole Brewing, that gave us the recipe for their Rapture, which is kind of a hybrid English and American brown ale. I had this idea that if I kept an extract kit around, that one night when I'm sitting around in the garage and I only have a couple hours, that I could do an extract brew in a shorter period of time. So I bought this extract kit with that in mind, And what I ended up doing is I think it sat in my kitchen for 4 weeks before I brewed it. And then I brewed it up, and I basically did the exact same process that I do when I do an all-grain batch. The mash was left out of it, but I whirlpooled the same. Everything was exactly the same. And once I kegged this and tasted it, I was very surprised at what I got out of it. So I want to pour some for everybody here. And I think that this
kind of... yours, Greg? The first one you put?
Meanwhile, I have the all-grain version of this, which was brewed
like
fresh and, came from the same recipe kit.
For you guys that are not in state, I highly recommend this kit because I have people rave about it when they brew it and they bring it in.
It's a fantastic kit. I've had it brewed by people several times, and it's real consistent, and it's just an excellent beer.
And if you like brown ales and you like kind of maybe an English but with a touch of American, it's kind of they call it kind of a fusion. It's like English and American hops, but it's a really good little beer. Okay, so this is yours, Brandon?
Yeah, so this is a perfect example because we're all very familiar with this beer. We've had the commercial beer umpteen times. We've had the homebrew kit done a bunch of times, so I know exactly what it's supposed to taste like. I know how it can taste like coming out on a homebrew level. And when I kegged this and I tasted it, I was blown away by what I got out of it. So,
which is the ever dreaded homebrew taste.
It's exactly what you think
when
of.
People reference that.
What people say of, or that extract twang is the way they put it.
To me, this tastes just like an English beer to me.
No, he's right about it. It
really?
has this.
It's a little better now that it's sat a week or two, but to me, it still has that homebrew flavor that people talk about. That extract flavor.
I don't get that at all. I really don't.
Well, there's
as a matter of fact, if you would have put these side by side and I say which one I like better, I'd like the extract one better.
Really?
No doubt about it. No. I mean, if I'm looking for an English style beer,
I couldn't disagree with that more.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm totally.
In fact, I'll trade kegs with Greg
as a matter of fact, look,
it's Trish's.
It's even clearer than yours is, Greg.
Greg's is much better.
Yeah, but his is also not quite as dark either.
Yeah, it's not quite as dark.
His has like an envelope kind of flavor across it, which to me would be the extract version of That's
I don't think
problem.
what you guys are getting is extract at all.
Well, I think
there's no oxidation there.
I think it's just older extract. I think I let it sit on my kitchen table for a month.
I disagree. 100%.
Do you disagree?
100%.
What is the difference that you think?
It's definitely a different base malt. I mean, it's just it's to me this tastes more English. To me, it does. It has more of an English character.
I think it has more esters to it. Would be
well, that
why
may be. That may
say
be.
That.
May be
what yeast did you
feels like
use,
the
Greg?
bitterness is it's the Y yeast 12. The American L2.
Yeah, 1272.
1272.
Really, you use the 1272 because that's an estery yeast.
Yeah.
That and I don't get esters out of yours. I use the Liberty Bell, which I've been using for everything English lately.
I use it for everything.
Has fairly restrained esters to it. It's not, and especially I fermented this at like 63 or 64, so they're pretty restrained at that.
Yours
that
is less roasty than Greg's is too.
Well, that's for sure. It's definitely less roasty. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, the color difference is there too. But I honestly, though, I agree with Brandon that a lot of times when people say there's a homebrew taste or some sort of twang, I get that in the smell and the
really.
I get it in the aroma and the flavor.
I don't get that at all. What you're talking about? There's no phenols. There's no.
And I'm not saying
I don't think there's any phenols to it. No.
There's no.
There's kind of an estery. That and I think everybody knows what we're talking about when we say that homebrew taste. That
like it didn't come out quite right. There's something off about it that
right.
You just,
it's not exactly.
And usually there's a combination.
Now it
of
is better than
that envelope, that flavor that you wanted to get. It's just it's in there, but it's covered by something.
See, you tasted this a couple of weeks ago when I first. It's better now than it was then.
It is, but it's not hugely different either.
It's not hugely different.
To me, this it's smoother. I mean, I don't know. It's just me. I prefer this one. And I mean, that's not only because
the bitterness level is higher on Brandon's too. I get that. That comes across more. And it lingers longer.
I think that's because yours is roastier. I think that's why. I think the roast kind of covers up a little bit of the bitterness because it's like a chocolate.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. They have the exact same specialty malts.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Exact same specialty malts. So why is his darker?
Well, my guess would be, I'm putting my specialty malts in a bag and hanging them over the edge of the thing for 45 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes.
Right.
And he's got all of those same grains just soaking in water for an hour with complete exposure to the hot water.
Is there something to adding your specialty grains towards the end of your mash then? On the dark malts?
Well, I think you would definitely get different results. I like Greg's better.
I would think
an experiment that we're going to run.
See, this one goes to me because it tastes like the real thing.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, though. To me, and this is totally not and I think these are both drinkable beers. But I actually get a little more tannic out of yours, Greg, than I do out of his, or tannins. You know what I mean? Like maybe a slight more of astringency. Does that make sense?
That's very, very light if it's there. Mikey, what do you think?
I think that Greg's is better.
I agree. Me.
Yeah. There's more roundness in the flavor. I see what Stubby's saying about the English character of yours, but
I think that's because there's more esters to it.
Well, you're using two different yeasts too. That could even have a difference in the color.
Oh yeah, there would be. I get more of the. If you say English, that would be like that sort of treacle character, which is a very intense flavor that overpowers a lot of other flavors.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Versus this one, which I can get more distinction between flavors. So it's like this.
I think yours tastes closer to the actual rapture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I would probably agree with that.
Definitely.
But I'm telling you that taste of the. I mean, if you taste them side by side, the all grain version tastes. You get, and this could be yeast too.
Yeah,
this totally could be yeast. They can completely affect. They can affect not only your esters, but it can also affect your overall flavor. Because I know that they actually use a 1272 for the style.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah,
I didn't
they
know
actually
that.
do
Okay.
use that.
Yeah.
So. But
1272 is an estery yeast, though. So
yeah, but I get a lot more tannic flavor out of Greg's than I do. And you know what? This is not even a knock on Rabbit Hole, but that's one of the reasons I don't like that beer because it's too tannic to me. It's got a lot of.
I disagree with that.
It's got to me. I mean,
they never stood out to me really.
I really don't get that.
Really? Okay. Maybe that's just something
well, I mean,
to me, this to me.
Oh yeah, it's very subjective. Yeah.
Well,
everybody's palate's different, you know.
And here's the problem too with this comparison: you're using two different yeasts, probably two different fermentation temperatures. You know, so I mean, it's really not a really true. I mean,
well, for me, what stuck out about it because I've tasted, I've tasted the extract version of this. Brewed by several different people.
It's different.
And it always was very, very close.
Yeah.
And with mine, it was at least 4 weeks before I brewed it. And I thought, what I thought it brought to the conversation was this whole idea of extract brewing having a particular taste to it.
Yeah.
Could probably be attributed to extract that wasn't handled correctly or was let sit for too long before it was used. I know that when I was extract brewing years ago, that I was getting it mail ordered to me, or I was getting it from a place that didn't turn it over or didn't push it with CO2.
Here's my biggest problem with that whole statement is that the first time, if you had a problem with your all grain brew, you wouldn't attribute it to being an all grain problem. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times people, when they brew an extract beer, they go, "Oh, well, it's just extract."
Well, the reason I make the distinction is because when I switched to all grain brewing, I saw an improvement in the taste of my beer. And this is before your shop was ever open or anything. And where I was getting my ingredients from was inconsistent. Some of it was mail order. Right. Some of it was a local shop. One in particular that doesn't exist anymore that just had terrible practices of handling their ingredients. From what I saw.
That's true. There's a lot to that. And
in this case, I didn't handle this ingredient correctly.
Right.
I let it sit on my kitchen table for 4 weeks where it was warm. Right. And, obviously there's some oxygen uptake when it goes into the little container that we put it into. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it's a good example of...
Could have even been open,
unsealed. Maybe that brings up a good experiment is let's do a fresh extract batch. Let's do 2 fresh extract batches, and let's do one in a partial boil, one in a full boil, and then let's do the exact same kit, but let's let the malt, let's let the extract sit for a month, maybe in the back warehouse, and do the exact same kit again in a partial boil and a full boil, and see what we can come up with.
And that's kind of maybe what, and that, I guess that's the kind of thing that we have issues with all the time is people, I have people come in, and I'm not BSing you. I have people come in and they go, well, I had a kit for 6 months. Is it still okay to brew? No, throw it away.
Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Well, you could brew it, but it's not going to be the beer that you want it to be.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about is extract gets a bad rap a lot of times.
Well, that's the reason we quit carrying the kits that we used to carry.
Right, and there's several different reasons for it. There's all kinds of different reasons. This stuck out to me as, hey, this might be a reason where people think, man, as soon as I switched to all grain, the quality of my beer changed, where they just don't have access to a local supplier.
Well, that may be the case.
That turns over a lot of extract, that pushes it with CO2, that they brew with it right when they get it. And I just thought that was useful information.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to Nigel just recently, and I asked him, I said, hey, he goes, well, I'm just going to kind of go back to the drawing board because my beer is not tasting like what it was. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, when I won third place in best in show, it was an extract beer, and I can't seem to replicate that.
Well, yeah, and we talked about that on the Going All Grain episode. Once you go all grain, you introduce all these different ways to screw your beer up.
Right. So here's the God honest truth. You can screw your beer up with extract. We've talked about this multiple times about how you overboil it, underboil it. You don't stir it in well. It's the same thing with all grain too, though. You don't hit your temperatures. You put too much water in. You don't put enough water in. You get it too hot. You get it too cold. Yeah, I mean, there's all these different variables. So I guess the biggest problem I had, I recently saw a study or a comparison, all grain versus extract, and those are hard comparisons to make.
Yeah, they really are. You're right.
And you can't just really say, hey, well, this is a definitive answer. Hey, we did this beer and we did this beer, and it's completely different, and one's better than the other. And
that was exactly my point with this. Here's a variable that I hadn't considered before that I felt like made a big difference, and it's one of 10 different variables that you could play in there.
So you couldn't really blame it on just being sitting on your counter for 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, in this particular case,
is that you had multiple versions of the same kit as extract that worked exactly like it was supposed to.
And I know that I let this one sit longer than I should.
So you can't blame it on you just being a bad brewer.
Well, I could, but that's not very good content.
Sorry, man. Nice. I just had to go.
Well, no, I just think it lends something to this discussion about extract, and we've talked about this numerous times on the show that we think that bashing extract is incorrect. That we know for a fact that people put out really fantastic beers with extract, but we also know that there's
limitations.
There's limitations and there's differences, and there's other factors you have to consider with extract that maybe you don't have to consider with all grain, and vice versa.
You can have the same problem with homebrew shops that don't turn over stuff well,
right?
Even doing all grain,
and that's something to say about this.
No, exactly right. Yeah,
if you have you go into your local homebrew store that doesn't have a lot of volume or doesn't turn over stuff, and you go in and you get something odd like Golden Promise. Well, hell, that thing may have been sitting there 2 years. Who knows?
Right.
So
rarely used items.
There's something to be said there, and that's one of the things that we really try. If something doesn't sell well here,
we send it to Ethiopians.
Oh my God.
We just send it on over there and they
Dallas
eat it.
Cowboys, Sally Struthers shirts, stuff like that.
Brandon has a one-on-one connection with Sally Struthers.
I caught Stubby off guard with that one.
Okay. Anyway,
if you really want to get back to the homebrew taste thing, the thing that the best I could say about it is that Brandon's beer right now has that flavor that a lot of people call out There's something wrong with this, and then you get a beer and you go, well, there's something that's wrong.
I totally understand what you're saying with the homebrew taste. I don't get it with that one.
It's not. I do.
I don't get it.
It's that sort of. It's an envelope that's muddied all the other flavors that are going on. It's usually a little too bitter. You can't quite pick out flavors as well, and then it's sort of often enough like a dark fruit raisiny end note that is there that shouldn't be there for what you're drinking. You know,
there's a certain sweetness to it. I think
well,
it's not like attenuated sweetness.
That could even be his boil technique. I mean, it really could be. I mean, it could be the way.
Damn it, Brandon! Did you ruin this?
I'm just saying you can't.
Did you boil it?
On this one in particular, I specifically went with a very, very mild boil because of what Stubby's always talking about overboiling extract. So, no, but you're right. It could be that. But that's exactly my point. That's exactly the kind of the point I want to bring up with this is that there are so many different things that can affect it that it just goes to what we've always been talking about don't feel like you can't make great beer with extract because there's all different kinds of things that can affect it. So, you just have to have a lot of good practices that go along with the extract, just like you do with all grain.
Right. And here's something.
Starting with the ingredients.
Like I was talking about, Greg's earlier, that, I feel like I had a little more tannic character. And that could all be, pH and water content, where that'll have a bigger, that can have a lot bigger effect on your overall beer.
It could be huge.
Well, compare. You're not
best ever.
You're not as worried about.
Nobody has tannins like Greg.
You're not. God damn it! If you're not. If you would just get out of the closet once in a while, damn it! I'll tell you about this damn beer.
I like it in here.
No, it's
warm. All my homebrewing equipment is in here.
There's a huge difference there in how you can mash stuff in your pH and your water chemistry and all of that when it comes to extract versus all grain. So, it's a lot more important when it comes to all grain. So that can completely change the beer as your water content and what your pH was and all of that different stuff. So,
speaking of that, I'm sending my sample off. I gave Mikey my sample from my house, which is a new place that I'm at versus the other times I've brewed this. I should get a sample from my old house as well. The same filter and all that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I still own the old house. So it's I can do that back and forth, and then maybe if we can still work with this company that we're working with, we can get multiple samples across the board, and then also start a good water discussion that tells us something about what we want to make with our beers, because I think that's a good launching point.
Well, and we can get into. I don't want to really get into a whole lot of water chemistry, but I will say this: that from what I understand, from it's been my experience, the darker the beer, the more that the water chemistry really has an effect on the flavor of the beer. Because
and you get bitterness.
You get a lot of different. You get tannins that can contribute to your bitterness. You can also get it can affect your pH, so you get different hop character. Everything. All of those different things. So, for example, here where I'm at now, here in the Metroplex where I'm brewing now a lot, if I'm doing a light colored beer, I may need to adjust my pH to lower my pH to get where I'm really wanting it to be. But let's say if I'm brewing a stout or something, I probably wouldn't adjust my pH to bring the pH down
because your roasted malts are going to do that for you. Yeah,
they're gonna. But you can. Let's say, for example, you may actually have to add some additives to not lower your pH. To raise your pH up, because if you get too much pH, it can extract some tannins from those dark malts. So, that's a whole other discussion. That's a whole other show. But that's some food for thought to really think about too.
All right.
Okay. So go ahead, Greg.
We're going to go ahead and move on from that. That homebrew taste thing we could talk about a lot, and that's something that a lot of people are familiar with. But speaking of homebrew, we also have a grapefruit IPA sample here of one of our kits. Grapefruit IPA kit from Chris Stevens, one of our customers. He wanted us to go ahead and try this on air. I haven't read his notes, but Brandon and Mikey have right now, and He just basically had an idea that he felt like this was off, right?
Well, he knows he missed a hop addition, so he added things a little out of order, according to his note. His gravity's off compared to ours, but I mean, 2 to 4 points is what I would consider normal. He's 10,000
plus, or 10,
10 or 15,
yeah.
So I'm assuming this is an all grain kit.
Do you have?
No, it's extract.
Do you have one? Pot
Yes,
of
I
me?
do.
Okay.
I would assume this is extract.
I don't know how you miss your gravity by that much
steeped.
with extract.
Yeah, so it's have to be.
Oh, you did say steeped? Okay.
He might need to check his hydrometer.
The first thing I would tell
temperatures,
anybody who gave me those notes would be, if you have an extract kit
Final
and your
volume.
numbers are off, add some water. Or,
final volume.
It smells good.
Oh, actually, this was way under, so he didn't
he's
boil off
under.
enough. Yeah, okay.
Forgot to add aroma hops.
it
1
smells
ounce of
right.
aroma added them to secondary with 1 ounce of Cascade, 1 ounce of Simcoe, and 2 ounce of grapefruit peel for 14 days after brew day. Aren't you supposed to add the grapefruit to the boil?
No, grapefruit's dry hop.
Is it dry hop?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
really good. Actually, I think this tastes great.
Dry hop for 7 to 9 days before cold crashing down to 40 degrees, kegged at 30 psi for 4 days. I'd love to hear your thoughts and critiques. Thought on what went wrong and how to fix the problem. Don't hold back. I want to learn how to brew better beer. Love the podcast. It smells good.
Thanks,
I haven't
Chris.
tasted of it yet.
It's pretty good. It's there's definitely grapefruit. I mean,
Yeah, it's a little bit bitter, but I would think that would be that the bitterness was adjusted for a higher gravity beer.
Based off the versions that
So-
I've had, it's a little sweeter than I think what I've had.
Oh, really?
To me, I get a lot more bitterness out of it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty bitter.
That one I'm kind of having a hard time with because of the grapefruit side of it.
Might be a little-
But I have that with every grapefruit
Yeah.
IPA, but like the
Yeah.
variants.
That's a good point.
you're
It's
gonna,
got that.
You're going to
kinda
get some bitterness.
astringency
Yeah.
that-
You're going to get some bitterness from the grapefruit. It smells like grapefruit.
maybe a little thin.
I think the taste is right. It's just like it's more like the side characteristics of sweetness. Maybe the body's a little heavier, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't hate on this beer. I don't think it's.
No.
I mean, could it be better? Yeah.
So let me ask you something. We're talking about an extract beer. The volume he ended up with at the end of his boil was 5.1 to 5.2 gallons.
Well, no,
But
so he
his-
said he
but his
boiled
gravity was off by-
He boiled from 5.1.
No, boiled to 5.1. 6.2 gallons, boiled to 5.1.
Okay.
Yeah. But his gravity is
Thanks for
off
your
by
notes,
10
by
or
the way.
15 points.
Well,
How is that possible?
There's a lot of ways that's possible. Error in
He-
reading a hydrometer.
Okay.
So he started with 6.2 is what he steeped
A bad
in,
hydrometer.
Okay. Right.
and he's going to pull those steeping grains out. What's that starting volume at once he pulls the steeping grains out?
Yeah, and
He said he steeped it in
here's
6.2
the
gallons. Not
problem.
that he put it in and then
Right,
measured his
right.
volume.
Right. So when you start with 6.2 gallons, you put those steeping grains in, you're going to lose some to the steeping grains.
A little
so
bit.
where's
not
that?
A lot.
About a half gallon or so
Yeah.
in that kit with that much grain.
Well, that's why you need to squeeze your grain bag.
Yeah, squeeze the snot
Squeeze your
out of it.
bag
Oh my god.
in the closet.
That thing about extracting tannins is a complete myth.
In the closet.
It's a complete myth.
Only if it's in the closet.
Yeah.
Well,
All right. Well,
Okay.
so I'm not digging
Everything's
into
in the closet. Everything we say ends with in the closet. I guess.
sparging
So-
over 170 degrees
And
is also a
hose.
myth at
Short
pulling
hose.
tannins if your pH is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So-
much more of a pH thing than anything.
I think maybe some
And a
of the-
half gallon doesn't make a difference of 10 to 15 points.
Here, honest to God, I think this may be part of the problem with this beer. The reason it's not as well rounded is he missed his aroma hops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get as big a floral aroma that I would expect from this particular particular beer. I've had this beer a million times. I think it's all there except the aroma is not there.
But I'm still stuck on the gravity.
So
part.
where the gravity went wrong.
Where did that gravity get? With extract, it's math. X amount of gravity or X amount of extract in X
this
amount
much
of
water.
water
Right.
equals these points.
Right.
That's the problem. When you're off 10 or 15 points, typically it's a water addition, problem.
You really didn't get the sugar out of the container.
A miscalculation on your water or how much volume you think you have, or there may be.
Well, that's a real good point. It could be that you're not calibrated to know how much water you have.
Yeah, you think your kettle is 5 gallons and you've poured up this much, or there's so much different. If you get this 1 gallon, if you get a 1 gallon bucket, and you're taking 1 gallon buckets, where the hell is a 1 gallon at? Because actually, like our 6.5
jug or something like that.
Well, I'm just saying.
Well, go to the grocery store and go look at the water aisle. Look at all the 1 gallon jugs. All the water levels in a different spot. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
You look at 20 of them. There's going to be 20 different water levels.
Well, I'm just saying for the standpoint.
So what are you measuring with?
Like our 6.5 gallon buckets, and it's the exact same from everybody. Those are 6 gallon buckets. They call them 6.5 in the brewing industry or homebrew industry because it's 6.5 gallons to the very top.
Well, right. Of course that would be the way you would measure it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
How else would you measure it?
Well, according to the company, those are 6 gallon buckets, but we measure them to the top. They're 6.5.
Because the company's saying 6 gallon usable.
6 gallon usable, but
basically.
they're 6.5 to the top. So, and the same thing even with a 1 gallon bucket. So, the best way I can say is find some way that you can actually measure your volume, whether it be your, even our buckets are off. I mean, one way or the other, it's not an exact thing; it's an estimate. But it just has to do with the printing process.
So the reason I stick on that is because that to me is the first thing that sticks out to this recipe, and if you're going to be that far off, you've got a real big problem somewhere,
right?
And you got to figure that out, because in a beer like this, I don't know that it makes as much difference because it's very hop driven and that kind of thing. But in other beers, that kind of difference is going to really stand out, and that'd be the first issue that I would.
By tasting that beer, though, would you say it was a 1055 beer?
No, I wouldn't.
As opposed to what? I mean,
like a 6.
So what? A 6% beer
68.
versus a 7% beer? I mean,
no, that would be like a 5.5 or 5.25 versus a 6% beer, depending on what its final gravity
well, I mean
is.
But can you really pick out the taste difference between a 5.25 and a 6?
I think I can. Yeah, I can think I can with the mouthfeel and the dryness. Yeah, I mean,
I feel like
this to me this feels like
drier.
this feels like a bigger beer than what he's saying it is. But that's just me.
We don't know what the finishing gravity was.
Well, that could be the sugar throwing off something like a double IPA would be.
Well, and one simple thing, and I don't remember if we talked about this before, but one simple thing you can do is I bought myself a 1 gallon graduated from a scientific company pitcher, and I measured out 1 gallon per. Filled up my brew kettle to a measured amount, and I boiled it. It's water, but I boiled it for an hour, and I realized that humidity and time of year is going to change that. But at least I know an average.
But at least you know where the marks on your kettle are if they're accurate too.
I know
You've
those
got to
marks,
calibrate your equipment. Yeah.
But I know roughly what I'm going to boil off in an hour boil. And so that's something I think everyone needs to do is figure out, well, I started with 6 gallons. I ended up with 5 gallons. Okay, that was right. That's what I should have normally had. So then you can plug that into your numbers and know that my gravity is going to hit the right target by boiling that far.
Yeah, see, and to me, if you're going to talk about, I think my beer is off, and the very first thing that stands out to me is you're 10 or 15 points off on gravity. That's the first thing I would work on fixing, period.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe just as a simple, hey, let's get let's
calibrate your equipment. Yeah, figure out, are you measuring?
Calibrate your hydrometer.
Calibrate your hydrometer.
I've
calibrate your kettles.
I've seen those little pieces of paper and those hydrometers
all the way down.
Just slip,
they shift.
Yeah.
And
but then calibrate your equipment and make sure that you have the amount of water you think you do, or the amount of wort or whatever.
Yeah.
Typically, are you putting an immersion chiller in here? Is that having any effect on the volume in your kettle when you chill it? That's something too, as well. So sorry about the also too. I feel bad.
No, but I don't think it doesn't look like he had too much of a boil off. It looked like about a gallon and
which is about appropriate.
Yeah.
Usually you should be somewhere around a gallon and a half.
Yeah.
Depending on your kettle size.
I wished I had the instructions for this particular kit because I really like to look at that versus what he said he did. So, but interesting. But
Mikey's going to whip that out.
Well, I think I've got it.
Does it say to dry hop for 7 to 9 days before cold crash? I mean, that seems like an awful long time.
It's probably 5 to 7 days, it says, I would guess. Because I don't know that 2 days is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. I don't think that, to me, I mean, my biggest thing is I don't get it. The only complaint I would have with this beer, I think it's very drinkable. I like it. I think it tastes great.
It does taste great, yeah.
The only thing that I feel like it's not as well rounded as I'd like to see it. You know what I mean? And
that's a tough thing to do with IPAs. It's a underrated skill.
Yeah, and I think
to get
maybe,
the hops to pop the way you want them to.
And I think maybe what's missing is the aroma. And that's a lot what he missed. So
well, but see, you get aroma out of dry hops though too, and he added them dry. Now it'll be a little different. Granted, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing, but I mean, but if you miss 3 ounces of a hop addition on a dry hop, that could be an issue.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm looking at the kit instructions here. It actually says add in secondary 7 days before bottling, 1 ounce of Cascade, Simcoe, and 2 ounces of grapefruit peel. And let's see what he said here.
He added something 14.
Yeah,
he needed a
dry
14
hop
days
for 7 to 9 days before cold crashing. He added 2 ounces of grape peel for 14 days. So you may get a little. I mean, by adding that grapefruit peel for that long, you might get a little extra bitterness than maybe what you're wanting. Then too much bitterness.
Zach is saying he tastes too much bitterness.
Yeah. So
well, and that can be from the low gravity.
Mm-hmm. Well,
10 or 15 points low on gravity is huge.
But if you have that much grapefruit peel in there for that much longer, you might be getting a lot more bitterness from that grapefruit than what you're intending.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of starting to be this finish in my mouth is kind of being like kind of the grapefruit rind. You know,
and that's
from
and I will say this. I've had lots of different grapefruit IPAs, and that's one of the things. It's a really delicate thing that you have to be really well balanced with, and you have to be really careful with that because I think you can overdo it in a hurry. There's a lot of them I've tasted it tasted like they blended up grapefruit and actually put it in the beer.
Right.
I mean, it was like pulp and
over
rinds
the
and
top.
everything, and it's just like, wow, that's really gross. So
you're gonna something I was thinking about. I missed a second there, but talking about like the directions and the timing and everything, all the time frames. Let's say the original recipe was brewed at one person's house, and it came out, and they brewed it multiple times in a certain way, and it came out the same way every time. And then we took that recipe and we made it at the shop, which oftentimes we have to round some edges and things like that to make sure that you can brew it at home better than what the person at their house did, because it's not going to apply as well. We brew it a certain way. It shows up a certain way here because it's the way we brew it at the shop. Then you take the same thing home, and at your house, it's brewed as specifically as we can give it to you, but you're still going to have to hone some things to really get it the way maybe that you feel like it should be versus what you're reading out of a recipe. Maybe you're thinking it should taste a certain way, but you're not going to be able to reproduce what you've done or maybe tried here at the shop or at somebody else's house as much. We just try to make sure that we get everything as close as possible on a lot of these things.
Okay, so here's what he says, too, that he did. He said, forgot to add aroma hops, 1 ounce Amarillo, 1 ounce Chinook, added into the secondary with 1 ounce of Cascade, 1 ounce of Simcoe, and 2 ounces of grapefruit peel. So he added...
That's what I would have done.
1, 2, 3, 4... He added 4 ounces of dry hops with 2 ounces of grapefruit peel and left it for 2 weeks. So that may be why we're getting some of that extra bitterness too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But we talked a lot about
that. Add your aroma hops, I would just throw them into your dry hops.
I get that too. But when this beer already has a whole lot of aroma hops, I mean, like dry hops, we talked about this a lot in this last episode about dry hopping and how they add bitterness and how they don't. You know.
Oh yeah, the recipe.
But I don't think they add any more bitterness than the hops you would have thrown into the boil as aroma hops.
Probably not. I mean, this one we just did.
That would be a good experiment.
Actually, let me see
because that's the thing, really. I think if you want to talk about adding aroma, you're probably adding more actual aroma through dry hopping than you are throwing something in the last 5 minutes of the boil or whatever.
I mean, granted, this is all calculated IBUs, but we had a 10-minute, a 5-minute, and then some whirlpool additions, some steeping additions, and the majority of the IBUs calculated are coming from a whirlpool steep edition on this New England IPA that we brewed last week. So I mean, there's like 34, 40 calculated IBUs.
We're not talking about that.
We're not talking about that. What are you talking about?
I'm saying that you can get higher IBUs based on later additions, steeping,
Right. Exactly.
dry hopping.
That's what I'm saying.
This
If you're talking about strictly aroma, you probably get more straight aroma if putting it in the dry hop than you do throwing it in for the last 5 minutes, because you're also getting flavor and bitterness out of that.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is you're getting that bitterness.
You know, and the more I drink this beer, the more I think, wow, I get a lot of rindy grapefruit
that's
flavor.
what I'm getting.
Yeah, it's
more
got a bit
rye.
of that astringency. That
and that may be just due to the 2 weeks
for leaving it
being
in for
the
so long.
secondary,
Yeah.
you know, because you think about it. I mean, what are you getting from that fruit? Or those peels? You're not getting any kind of sugar from those. Are dried out. All the sugar's gone. You're getting all the oil from the peels.
Well, it depends
You know?
on which type of peel you're using too. Are you using the sour grapefruit or the sweet? Some of it has more pith to it than others do.
Well, that's American.
I'm not sure
grapefruit,
what
so
you
I don't
put in those kits.
We put a great American grapefruit peel in there.
That's what we get bulk.
But like with orange peel, you can get two different kinds. You can get sweet
yeah.
and
Right, you
Well,
get
sour,
sour
you got
orange
sweet and
and
bitter,
you get-
yeah.
yeah.
but
and the
those are grown
difference
in
is
two
one
different
has more
countries.
pith to it.
Yeah.
I think grapefruit's pretty much one standard
Yeah,
grapefruit
I mean,
peel.
it's-
There's not a sweet and bitter as far as that one goes. I don't think.
No.
If anything, they might have that one that's sort of like the super citrate.
Yeah,
version.
well,
Right.
that's just different process how they.
Yeah, that's just
produce it.
dehydrated differently.
Yeah, but the
Because grapefruit, I mean, isn't considered sweet at any point in time for the most part.
well,
You know,
they may be
with-
sweet.
Well,
in
but this is the
California,
peel,
you
though.
know.
This
Well,
is the peel.
it's still on
And
there.
when you get the pith in there, you get more of that bitterness. You
Don't
that
get pithy
bite.
with me.
Don't get pithy.
Zach liked that one. Wow. God.
Thanks, Zach.
Anyway.
So,
well,
but
Chris,
my opinion on this is the first thing I would do is straighten out why your gravity was so far off. I think you're going to have problems with all your beers if your gravity is that far off. This one is a little more forgiving in that regard because it's so hop driven. But other beers, you're going to have real issues if your gravity is 10 or 50. That's really far off. And I would fix that before I did anything at all. And then attribute whatever hop offness to the fact that you just forgot to put hops in at the right time, you know.
Because I'm going to tell you, and this is no BS. This is a fantastic recipe. It's been brewed over and over and over.
I think it's a really
absolutely
good
great.
beer that he gave us here.
Yeah,
I would
I
drink the
I would
shit out of
agree.
this.
Yeah,
Chris,
I
I
do too.
like it.
If he just brought it to us and said, "Hey man, I brought you a beer," this is
I'd love
great.
it.
Thanks, man. This is
Yeah.
good. I would
And
drink
it
a
is
pint
a
of this.
grapefruit IPA.
I would
You know,
order another
I'd butt
one.
chug this all day long.
Would you snorkel it with your penis?
That's just wrong, dude.
I mean,
Dude,
that's
oh
what
my
that's
God.
what
I hope everybody listens to all these old ass episodes to know what you're referring to. I'm just saying these are all like old flashbacks. It's like
I
2 or 3
one,
years.
You're doubting the legacy of our listeners.
Oh my God! We probably lost all of our listeners tonight.
What listeners?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hey, yeah. Thanks, Chris. We really appreciate
Chris,
the
that
fact
was
that you
awesome.
jumped
Yeah,
in
Chris.
on the offer
Yeah,
for.
I would
doing that on the
really
radio.
like. I would hope that more people would actually do this. I think this is a.
Yeah.
And, you know,
You don't have to be in town.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to be in town. You can ship them
can
to
mail
us.
it to us.
We can evaluate it with you. And we
And
might
we do
even,
like
we
the
might even
notes.
start just doing a quick segment where we can actually call the brewer and
Yeah,
talk to
I
him.
think that'd be a great idea because
Yeah.
I would have had some questions for him on
Well, I
that.
invited
for
Chris.
Yeah.
He asked when we would be doing this. I told
We
him,
even
but
had
he
an
just
empty
dropped the
chair
beer
tonight,
off,
too.
So
I
it's
know.
like we could have had him.
Pete.
We could have had him in, and we would be happy to have you in to have these discussions. I mean, you could probably come in another time and make that work. So.
If
You
you
know,
have if
I
you have
actually-
a beer you want to send in, go ahead and send it to Texas Brewing Inc. The address is 5200 Airport Freeway, Suite B, Haltom, Haltom, Haltom City, Texas, 76117. And you can put on an attention Come and Brew It radio, or you can just send it in with some notes in the box.
Try this, bitches.
Yeah, the more notes you can, the better. Chris gave us pretty good notes tonight. That really was helpful.
I think so.
It'd be a lot better if we could speak with you.
As I've worked in the shop before, and as we do things like this, the people that bring things in that they think there's something wrong with them, they're generally better than they think they are.
Yeah,
you know?
I think you're. Well, it's kind of like an artist. You know, you hear people talk about this. Your own worst critic,
Absolutely
right.
And I truly believe that.
And you're so close to it that it's tough to pick out this one little thing, and a lot of times it's one little thing. Like, this is really good, except for this one. If you want to nitpick it up, if you want to improve it, there's
and then
this one
see you to
thing.
get to my level, and then just everybody else is stupid, and all my beers are fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah. So
we're all
just
flawed.
teasing.
As
what's the part where we lost all our viewers?
You're just all stupid. You don't know how good my beers are.
Yeah.
I'm just
So
teasing.
anyway,
I'm just teasing.
This took a weird turn. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know about you guys, but
well, what are we doing in our upcoming episodes?
We're actually going to start your water discussion.
So
Mikey's working on that for us right
Insult people
now.
in Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Yeah, we're gonna piss off some.
I
more,
love
couple,
people in
a couple
Oklahoma.
more states. We're gonna start a water discussion.
for all.
We've been promising. We're gonna send
Oklahoma,
off,
Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
we're gonna send off some water samples from around the DFW area, and we're gonna get an analysis, and we'll see what we have to say about that. In our next episode, we'll be hitting up some Brew Tech. It's also my birthday.
Mikey's birthday.
So, woohoo. We're going to talk to...
do you really think there's anyone who is not aware that it's your birthday?
Well, people out in
Nationally.
listenership, don't care. But we're going to talk to the guy from Brewtronics. He makes the hose head controller that I use. So that'll be really cool.
Makes
Raspberry
brewing
Pi as
robots.
well.
It's a Raspberry Pi. We're going to have a Mike Treadway. We've had him in before.
Bots?
Hose
Hose
head.
bots, right.
Hose head.
No, I did not say hose bots.
We'll have Mike Treadway. You
That
guys have
sounds
heard of him
interesting.
before.
It's a brewing robots.
He's been here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's going to come in and talk about Raspberry Pi based fermentation control. So that's kind of cool. But be sure to check out our Patreon account at patreon.com/Come and Brew It Radio to
We
help
just
support
lost
the
all
show.
of our
Do it.
patrons tonight.
We have $2, $5, $10, $20 options because every little bit counts. Plus, we want to reward you while you help keep the show going, get involved, and improve it. And
Remember,
plus we got those shirts ready.
In June,
Soon.
10
Yeah,
and 20.
yeah.
10 and
You get
20,
the-
get a good shirt.
You get the
embroidered.
kick-ass embroidered t-shirt.
I think I
Not
might
a
have to
t-shirt.
sign up so I can get
I
myself
know,
one of those
right?
shirts.
Yeah, there you go. You may
Can we
have
buy
to.
one of those for
Yeah,
us?
you have to buy one.
Okay.
'Cause you don't get one for free.
I'll do that.
Otherwise, thanks again for listening
yeah.
to Come and Brew Radio. Be sure to share with your friends on social media. Give us some ratings on iTunes and Stitchers. Stitchers. And send any ideas or comments to info@texasbrewinginc.com. Also, you can always check in on the Brewdays with our guys at their Brew Focus Facebook pages at Brew with Stubby, at Brew with Brando, at Brew with Mikey B, at Brew with Pete, and at Brew with Greg. Thanks for listening. Come and brew it.
Come and brew it.
When I first started on social media.
You started on social media?
Social
Social media.
It comes out. I had it when I was a kid. It still comes out.
who says it. He says
Social media.
When I first started on social media.
I can't help it. I had it when I was a kid. It still comes out.
No. It sounds like you're wasted, dude.
Every one of them. No, but Mike is the one who drops a shard at every episode.
Mikey
started
sharts
doing
every
this,
episode. Zach, are we still live? Because Mikey's sharting every episode. He said, yeah, we are. And we can smell it.
Look, I don't shart every episode, just like every third.